We've danced around the handbags with a number of firms and they haven't gone well.
Our firm felt like a bit of a family.
Yeah.
And a small business. That's
Well, I love the fact that you say SP Law is part of the EMW family.
Yeah.
I love that, by the way.
So that was how it grew. Sort of 20 years in, we'd sort of reached a ceiling. And we were finding it difficult to punch through that.
Did you do that because you were so confident you were going to win?
Can you go out for dinner with these guys, and do you get on? Because frankly, if you're sitting there with stilted silences for a couple of hours, then culturally, frankly, it's probably not going to work.
This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by digital media partner DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Based on what we've just discussed over the last 5-6 minutes, I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. Two solicitors from Northampton, and we're going to talk about all things law and merger.
We're switching on our professional mode now.
Yeah, we'll go professional.
So before we go any further, James, start us off. Just introduce yourself to our audience, please.
So I'm James Geary. I'm managing partner at EMW.
I'm Hassan Shah, and I'm not a managing partner of EMW, but I am a partner of EMW.
And also, some people that are watching this might remember you from Revolutions back in the day.
Not
James.
not the Civil
Not
War,
me.
obviously. Yeah, not the Russian Revolution, right? Yeah. No, I hope not. No, but I've got a secret past that my co-partners don't know about.
Well, we do now.
Actually, yeah. As I told them yesterday. No, but yeah, I did. I was a student DJ many years ago. I stopped, goodness me, 14, 15 years ago. So yeah, but it's an old life that I try to erase.
Sorry to bring that back up.
No, it's all right, Ben. You go for it. You
Great way to start.
Yeah, go for the low blows.
Absolutely. We can keep reminding you of it now, forevermore.
I could do the Christmas party.
You are.
DJ Shah and MC Geary.
We're like the Ant and Dec of Northampton.
Brilliant. So, gents, I want to talk about the journey, because early this year, your businesses merged. I think it's probably fair to say that EMW are probably more known and more prominent for, obviously, head offices in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
SP Law, born and bred in Northampton.
Yeah. So smaller sort of. I mean, we started in 2005, but we were, I suppose, focused on the sort of more local business, Northampton, sort of everyday areas of law, whereas EMW targeted sort of bigger sort of company, corporate clients, and did very well doing that. So we were almost at opposite ends of the sort of business market, I suppose.
People forget that EMW, its origins are in Northampton as well. We started just over the road from the Queen Eleanor. Handy to have meetings in.
Yeah.
In 1992. So for the first 15 years, we had a Northampton presence here. It was only a decision in 2006 where we were split across 2 offices in Northampton and 2 offices in Milton Keynes that we wanted to bring everybody under one roof. And at the time, it made sense for that to be Milton Keynes. Yeah. But even since then, we've been doing stuff in the county, doing stuff in the town over the years, and a lot of us live here as well.
I mean, oddly enough, when EMW were that sort of small emerging business in Northampton, I was training in the building next door.
Really?
In Queen Eleanor.
He couldn't get a training contract with us, you see, so he went over the road.
So it's odd. I mean, and actually one of our, one of the ladies that I worked with at that firm then briefly joined EMW. And then, 20, 25, 30 years later,
You've gone up full circle.
Honestly, it's incredible.
I'm fascinated by business, and I think probably since the pandemic, there's more merger and acquisitions that I've certainly been aware of through friends through business, and just reading the business news, if you like, than far more before the pandemic. So I'm intrigued to sort of find out a little bit about who approached who first, and just take us from that. I'm looking at you, Hassan.
Yeah,
we saw him in Revolution. And we thought, you know what? We need him in the partnership.
It was fate. I'm a big believer in those sort of things. And it sounds a bit weird, but I do genuinely believe in fate. And we, Joe Chapman was a paralegal at the time and then a trainee solicitor who worked at our firm that was SP Law. and then qualified, I think worked possibly at another firm for a short period of time and then joined EMW and stayed at EMW. But we were still in touch with Joe. And actually, and I think Joe may have come into our office for I can't even remember the reason now. I think that was where it started. And Joe possibly fed back to you guys because I think you were looking to come back into Northampton. So it was that sort of common thread.
And timescale wise, was that like a year ago, a couple of years ago?
So I think that it took almost a year, didn't it, from
it did.
those first discussions through to us actually signing on the dotted line and doing the deal. So that would have been early 2023, wouldn't it?
Yeah, merger was what, 31st of Jan?
24.
24, so yeah, it would have been 12 months. And then I suppose those conversations were happening a little bit before that.
Yeah, and for us it was, Ben, it was a bit of a no-brainer actually. We've got aspirational growth plans. We want to double in size over the course of this decade, and probably a third of that will be through organic growth.
Yeah.
Probably 2/3 of that will be through mergers in one form or another. So we've been actively on the lookout for firms that we could merge with some time. We've danced around the handbags with a number of firms and they haven't gone well. Those discussions in the end, it tends to be either an operation or a cultural misfit that just makes us go, actually, this just isn't going to work out. Alongside that, we are doing a lot of work in Northampton. We've always felt that there's more work that we could be doing back in Northampton. And also being lawyers, we tend to think that we can do it all ourselves. So we didn't engage a third-party agent to go and find merger partners for us. Yeah. One of my partners was essentially doing it off the side of his desk and speaking to the people within EMW and saying, actually, who do you know? And that's when Joe came forward and said, actually, you should speak to Hassan and his partner Sundip because they're good guys. Yeah. They tick the brief. Culturally, they're a good fit. They're not looking to bugger off and retire. Have a conversation with them. Yeah.
And from yours and Sundip's perspective, were you talk us through your sort of growth and aspirational plans pre-Joe having that conversation with you?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, we started in 2005. We were both working at other firms. I was at a big sort of national firm working in Birmingham, commuting every day. Sundip similarly was a decent-sized practice in Leicester, but living in Northampton. And we just sat down literally around his kitchen table one day and said, this is commuting an hour each day. Is murder. And this is home. We should really be doing something here. I mean, we both we were at the boys' school together. We were at middle school together before that. And we said, look, do you know what? Let's give it a go. So we bought an office in Abington, Stimson Avenue. We handed our notice in at work and literally turned up, I think, with a laptop each, a phone, and an ad in the Yellow Pages as it used to be.
Pages.
Yeah. And
I love it.
Yeah, and that's what we had. And we're literally waiting for the phone to ring. Yeah. And just sat there. And
it rang?
Yeah, I mean, and Sundip, it was property-related work, so Sundip dealt with that. He deals with the property side. So I must have spent the first few months just, working out how to use a photocopier and ordering fax machines and getting the website sorted out. And not
handling inquiries for Sundip, presumably.
Yeah, literally, I was his assistant for the first few months. And then the phone rang again. And that's how we started, and that was 2005. And we grew up to a point, I think, at our biggest, we were maybe 35. And we then moved to a bigger office. And so we were still looking to grow, but we started to find it difficult. I mean, I think sort of 20 years in, we'd sort of reached a ceiling, and we were finding it difficult to punch through that in terms of growth, in terms of sort of client base. And so that was the sort of conundrum for us. We're still looking to grow, but finding it difficult to achieve it or understand how to do it, because we're not, despite having set up a business, lawyers are probably not naturally good businessmen. And I think that would have been the point to pull in somebody, a third party, a consultant or somebody to say, look, guys, here's what you need to do.
Having those expertise. So to give us an idea for those that don't know, EMW in terms of headcount, James, roughly?
We are around the 150 mark.
Yeah. How talk us through, if you can, when you told the team? Because I can imagine for a smaller team joining that corporate life. I'm not saying EMW is corporate, but
no, I know what you mean.
There's almost like that. Some people, it would be a case of, I can't do corporate life, or they may well have been in your situation and Sundip's situation where it's like, I don't want to work for those bigger nationals. I'm quite happy working for a smaller business.
You're absolutely right.
How did that go?
Yeah. I mean, it changed a little bit, but it did. Our firm felt like a bit of a family.
Yeah.
And a small business.
I love the fact that you say SB Law is part of the MW family. I love that, by the way.
So that was how it grew. And a lot of the people that were with us from the start were still with us. So they've seen this thing grow, and it becomes like your little baby, I suppose.
Yeah.
So there was a real worry around that. And actually, there are people who actually prefer being that small sort of family feeling type of business. But what we said was, look, this is a really tough market. And, things like compliance, regulation, indemnity insurance, accreditations, recruitment, retention, cybersecurity, all the things that you need to do as a business before you even start your day job, before you even touch your casework in the morning. When you're running a small business, you've got to deal with all those things. And I said, actually, that's starting to become really, really difficult.
Tens of thousands.
And it's falling on the shoulders of you and Sunday.
Tens of thousands of pounds worth of X is there straight away before you've even opened up.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I said, look, that's starting to take a strain. And we want to grow. We want to, we've got a really amazing team. We're doing great work. We're really well respected and known in the community, but we need to do more. We need to get out there. And this, as I say, we weren't particularly looking for a merger, but actually when the conversation
just seemed
started,
right and felt right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And from your perspective, James, at what point did you sort of tell the team, and how did that go down?
So we told the team at the same time as Hassan told the SP team, because it doesn't matter how much you tell people to keep things under their
Northamptonshire
hat.
is a very small village.
It's a leaky old. It can be a leaky old ship sometimes, can't it? So we told everybody at the same time. But again, there was a lot of inquisitiveness on at the part of our guys, but really keen to get up to Northampton to meet the guys to find out what it was all about, and that's continued. They say they're naturally inquisitive characters, but yeah, really keen. In fact, in those early days post merger, it was sort of like, okay, I can't have 120 people turn up at Spencer Parade all on the same day because we don't have the space to.
The traffic wardens would be in their element.
Yeah, this is it.
And I mean, nothing's ever really 100% smooth sailing. I'm sure there was a couple of bumps in the road. For people listening, watching this, what advice would you give them that if you could go back in time that you would maybe do differently?
I think that it was probably, from our perspective, around some of the operational integration. So we made the conscious decision early on that actually getting the two teams integrated from a cultural perspective needed to take the priority. And what we'd do with the systems is that the systems would follow. We had that window between the 31st of January and the start of our new financial year on the 1st of April to try and roll those systems out. I think in hindsight, what we'd probably look to do is that whilst the cultural piece is still the most important element of it, is probably to accelerate the integration of those systems earlier, because what we had was people that, we used to having complete visibility of their files and their matters and all the financial information, and some of it was sitting on our systems, some of it was sitting on your systems. We've been through 3 months, haven't we, where it's been quite
a little bit
painful.
Of pain.
Yeah, and I think so. I think systems, I think, would be, for those listening and contemplating it, culture's got to be right, and those are the things that you have to suss out pre-merger before you just decide to do it. You've got to suss each other out and make sure that you're happy with how
did you do that? How did you suss each other out?
You sit in a room, you talk, you meet.
We've always
from the
said,
top down. So you got the partners together to sort of get to know each other, so to speak.
So we've always worked on the basis, on any discussions that we have, that the partners in the business that we're talking to know their people the best. For us, and we've learnt this the hard way over the years, we've realised that before you get to the point even of exchanging non-disclosure agreements and looking at financial information, you need to have what we'd call a glass of wine test. Can you go out for dinner with these guys, and do you get on? Because frankly, if you're sitting there with stilted silences for a couple of hours, then culturally, frankly, it's probably not going to work. So that was very much early days, wasn't it?
I think so.
We have those conversations, and actually we do all get on.
And did you two know each other before these conversations?
No, never
really?
met him. Yeah.
That's
Wouldn't have done it if I'd.
Yeah.
Well, no. Just spending that few minutes with you before we started this, I would say that you've known each other for years.
Yeah, it feels like that, but that just shows, doesn't it?
That
that it's we're working with the right people.
And on the culture piece, is that culture and well-being, etc., is so important now. We talked off camera before about the retention piece in the recruitment world. It's so important. What are you doing going forward? Because headcount now is going to be you're closer to 200 now than what you were before, and we'll come on to the future shortly. What advice or what are you doing for the rest of this year or going into next year that's going to work on that culture piece?
We're going out of our way to make sure that all the cultural pieces, all the cultural things that we'd normally do with old EMW, the SP the SP team are included with that kind of thing. Early days, 14th of February, we held a Valentine's themed lunch where we just got all of your guys on a coach, didn't we?
Freshers Fair.
Brought them down to Milton Keynes, buddied them up with people within EMW that we thought that culturally they'd get on with. And they spent 2 or 3 hours there looking around our offices, having a buffet lunch and all that kind of stuff. You know, you took them all out for dinner the other evening.
Yeah,
didn't
I told
you?
my guys when we went to Milton Keynes, I told them not to rob anything. I just said, look,
we're going over the M1.
yeah.
The knives and forks in your handbag.
Behave yourselves, guys. Come on.
With the exception of you, they were quite good.
Don't embarrass me. You know, it was great. It was really good. Yeah.
No, brilliant. And in terms of the breadth of service offering now, just talk us through that, because with your experience over the last 20 years, complemented by EMW, that's full sort of service offering. Just explain that a bit more for us.
So EMW started as a commercial law firm. So in those early days, bar for a bit of wills and probate that some of my colleagues were doing off the corner of the desks that frankly you probably wouldn't get away with these days because our insurers don't like it. The business was predominantly commercial, so entirely acting for businesses. What we've tried to do over the course of the last 6-7 years is increase the private client work. So we're talking there about family, wills and probate. A bit of residential conveyancing, that kind of thing. The reality, because EMW's origins actually lie in doing corporate transactions, M&A work. That work, by its very nature, is obviously transactional. As a result of that, EMW's work tends to lean towards being transactional in nature. So if I were to look at the types of work we were doing, probably 60 to 70% of it is doing deals in one form or another, whether that be commercial real estate or corporate M&A work. The problem with that is that it's exceptionally susceptible to the economic headwinds. So every time there's a bit of a bump in the economy, and let's face it, we've probably had 8 years of bumps in the economy, all of our clients go, I'm just going to sit on my hands for a little bit and see how that pans out. So the aim of our business has always been we want to continue to grow the transactional side, but we want to grow the non-transactional side faster. So it just makes it a bit more of a steady ship when you're going into an election, or you get a pandemic, or somebody decides you're leaving Europe, or whatever just happens to happen in any one week. By bringing the SP guys on board, their work is slanted a little bit more in that direction. So whereas if we'd had this conversation 2 years ago, I'd have said we're 97% commercial and 3% private client. It's starting to rebalance that a little bit. And
the ideal balance, 50-50?
In an ideal world. I mean, we're a way off that, but that's where I'd want us to get to. And the other thing for us as well is, as Hassan said earlier, our clients have historically tended to be lent towards those, I wouldn't say larger corporates, but they tend to be entrepreneurial, owner-managed SMEs that are on a journey. We know that we're a premium service. The challenge that we've always had is, okay, when you're taking a business on board that isn't in the place to be able to invest in EMW legal services, what actually do you do with them? You're sitting there and going, okay, the EMW service isn't quite right for you at this point in time, but what do you do with them? And we haven't really been in any position in the past other than to essentially say, well, if you go and Google, you'll find somebody that may be closer to your price point at this point in time. SP has opened those doors for us a little bit because their client base, a very good client base, I'll hasten to add, but tends to be probably towards the lower end of ours in terms of business size. So
it opens up the opportunity.
Yeah.
On the M&A, 2 questions here. First of all, the anybody listening, watching this, that's thinking about an M&A, and it might not be for this year, it might not even be next year. Professional services, so accountancy. Often that's the first firm that they would speak to. I'm thinking about maybe selling or merging. What's the benefit of getting in touch with you guys to say having the same conversation alongside their accountancy firm?
It's about getting your legal ducks in a row, for want of a better description. So we've certainly found over the years that clients are speaking to us earlier and earlier about deals that are on the horizon, and it may be that they don't know what they're going to do at this point in time, but we've been there and seen it, so we can probably open up suggestions that they'd never have thought of.
Yeah.
What we can also do is make sure they've done a little bit of housekeeping. So we've spent a good proportion of our history acting for businesses that are looking to buy, so we know what are red
buyers
flags,
want.
what
Yeah.
are red flags for buyers. So increasingly what we're doing is putting our buyers' hats on and going to a business that's looking to sell and go and say, okay, we'll go in and essentially do a red flag review of all your documentation and everything, and we'll tell you where the problems are. And if we do that before you go to market, we can either A, sort them out, or B, make sure that we've concocted a good story around it so it doesn't cause problems later on. Because the problem is, if you don't, what happens is you think you've agreed everything, they start doing their formal legal due diligence, and then the price just gets chipped away slowly and slowly.
And from an M&A perspective, I guess that's probably a sexy part of law. Is that it would
I don't know about that.
yeah. But what's your favourite area of law?
Well, look, I do litigation, so a lot of property litigation.
He likes a good
employment
fight.
law,
Good fight.
bit of a scrap, a bit of that's. But having said that, you might think that something, residential conveyancing might be really boring, but actually, if that's what you do and that's what you enjoy, you love it. So I don't know if there's a one answer to what It's
But
just
for
what
you love
for me, it's
litigation.
litigation. You've got finding the angles, negotiating, picking up the phone, doing all those things.
I'm going to come back to that, James. What's your
So intellectual property, so I'm talking about trademarks, patents, that kind
How
of thing.
boring is that?
I'm what we'd term a commercial lawyer by trade, so I've dealt with a lot of intellectual property. But having somebody that comes to you and says, I've got this idea, how do I protect it? And when you've protected it, how do I then go and exploit it? That's the interesting stuff for me.
obviously I'd never ask you to break confidentiality, but is there a
I'll go on. They get him struck off.
is there a career highlight of either an IP project you've worked on?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the same question as well.
He's not worked on any IP.
No. I meant for litigation.
Yeah, so early on in my career, I acted for a business that had invested in wind turbine technology. Wind turbine technology had been patented by a German company. The German company had sold it to Alstom, the big...
Yeah,
you know Alstom.
Alstom, yeah.
Alstom couldn't make any money out of it because it was essentially over-engineered, and our client bought it off of Alstom. The client decided that the market was in the UK and Europe was just too unstable at that point. So we're talking sort of mid-noughties. And he decided that he was going to license it to Chinese and Indian companies. So at about 3 years qualified, on about 48 hours notice, I was sent off to Beijing and Shanghai for 3 weeks with the client to start closing some of these deals, some of these wind turbine technology licensing agreements. Yeah, that was a bit of a baptism of fire at the time.
I can imagine.
When you're sitting there in a room with 20 other people and you're amending the document on the screen as you go. Very little sleep. Didn't see a lot of China because I was just in meetings all the time. But I mean, there's not many 3-year qualified lawyers outside London that are doing those kind of things. And it was certainly something that EMW hasn't been involved in a project like it since. So I think it's fair to say that would probably be my highlight.
Go on, match that.
Didn't know we had it in him.
Go on then.
No, well,
15 love.
No, do you know what? And this is probably a good illustration of the sort of different markets that we've been working in, because we were a community-based law firm and doing what I term everyday law. So if I was going to pick one case from the last 20 years, I think it would be I acted for, I think it was over 100 employees of a factory in Wellingborough, actually, that were made redundant. But the company had done it unlawfully, essentially. They'd been a bit sneaky. And so I acted for them, all of them, and got them, essentially, their correct redundancy payments, because the company had done it in such a way that we're trying to underpay them their redundancy or avoid it in certain situations. And these were pretty ordinary guys. They've been working there for their entire lives, and there were some of them, in their some of them been there for 50 odd years.
When was
and
this? How
This
long ago?
was, goodness me, this would have been about perhaps 15 years ago, maybe
Who
10
was
to.
the
I
firm?
can't
You
say,
can't say.
but 10 to 15 years ago. So
Sorry.
and I remember going to a community centre in Wellingborough with literally 100 people there, really worried about what's going to happen. Asking about fees. I was saying, look, how are we going to pay for this? And we, in fact, we did it on essentially a no win, no fee. We said, look, if we don't lose, we won't charge, and if we do, then we'll take a little bit from everybody. And that's how we did it.
And did you do that because you were so confident you were going to win, or B, because just morally it was right that
It was the right thing to do,
needed,
and
yeah.
people had approached us from the community
Yeah.
to say this just doesn't feel right. So that was the reason we did it, and the rest of it. I mean, you can't take 100 people on a journey that they're going to in a case that they're going to lose. So we did the right things. We got a counsel's opinion. It was there were some quite technical areas of this particular case, but it went to court. It wasn't like it settled before. They fought it all the way.
Really?
Yeah,
How long
yeah.
did that take?
Oh my goodness! I mean, it was probably a process that took maybe a year and a half.
Wow.
I mean, even now in employment tribunal, you might not get your final hearing for 2 years.
Really?
So that is something that one that stands out, and not one that we made the most money from.
No, of course.
But it was
but
probably
that's
one that we
testament to you, because there's a lot to be said about doing the right thing. And one of our mottos here is about making a difference. How can we make a difference within the communities that we work within? And that for sure, because I'm a Wellingborough boy.
Yeah. So that it was also a reasonably good illustration. Actually, we were talking about culture earlier, and you were asking how's it changed.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being focused on business, and EMW have done that brilliantly and continue to do so. SP, and it might be a criticism, but maybe we weren't quite so business focused, and because we're doing stuff like I just said. But actually, we've now brought that in to the EMW sort of set now. I mean, and that sort of corporate social responsibility, that sort of community sort of involvement is something that I think we've added. It was there already, but I think we're now developing and nurturing that.
And it's important that we do, given that we got our B Corp certification 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Their motto is very much one of being a force for good. So actually it can't all be about making money. We've actually got to be giving back to the community.
I was going to talk about that, so we'll do that now. That must have been a very proud moment for you guys, because I think every business owner in the country would love to be B Corp, but unfortunately running a business is incredibly difficult, and it's just perhaps not on page one of their priority list. But for someone like EMW to go and get that, just talk us through that process and how proud that you must have been when you got that stamped.
Yeah, I mean, in reverse, as a partnership, incredibly proud to have got it. It was spearheaded by our chair, Nick Lloyd. He came to the table probably 3 years ago and presented quite passionately about the fact that clearly we got a generation of younger lawyers that were coming through, that actually the ESG piece really mattered to them. Alongside that, we are on a number of panels for the work that we do, and inevitably there's an increasing focus on those panel applications to demonstrate that you are, in inverted commas, doing the right thing. There has been for years, but in the past you've been able to, dare I say it, knit a bit of fog, and it's been enough to go and get you through the process. The reality is that doesn't work anymore. They want to see a genuine commitment to do this kind of thing. And I think we sat there as a business and thought we could actually, dip our toe in the water and do the bare essentials that are needed in order to ensure that we get these panel appointments and try and keep the younger generation of lawyers happy. But that's not really the EMW way. The EMW way tends to be, we see something there, sod it, let's just jump in and do it. At the time we went for B Corp certification, I think there were about 8 other law firms in the UK that had got it. That's increased over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. But again, you're probably talking 20 in the UK.
Yeah, it's under 25, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Did Adrian Price help you with this?
No, we did it all ourselves.
Did it yourselves?
We did it all ourselves. I mean,
Adrian would be very proud.
Yes. Well, I had coffee yesterday morning with Adrian, so there's certainly.
Did it go into dinner?
Yeah. So
I love you, Adrian.
There's certainly something we can be doing with Adrian going forward.
Definitely.
Because, for those that don't know about the B Corp certification process, you score across the entire of your business, and you have to meet a certain threshold.
Yeah.
Then you have to demonstrate essentially year-on-year continuous improvement. So always very keen that we didn't absolutely smash it out of the park in year one, because you've actually got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
We also took the decision that year one, we wouldn't engage anybody externally to help us. We'd do it ourselves. So that meant that from a governance perspective, we scored, funnily enough, really, really highly, because it's the area that we specialise in.
Yeah.
There are other areas that in order to move to the next level, actually, we will have to start talking to other people, despite the fact that we sometimes think that we know how to do everything. The reality is that you need that external support when you need it.
Adrian's been talking about that ESG piece and B Corp for a number of years. I went to, he spoke at a Vistage event, I think it was just as we were coming out of the pandemic, and I was just blown away by his enthusiasm for
Hugely.
it. And now you're seeing businesses like yours that are leading the way. And when you think about how many legal firms are around the UK, you're one of 25.
Yeah.
I think I was looking at it yesterday. I think there's less than 25 that have got it. So that's brilliant. That's fantastic. We're coming to the end of this episode, but I want to just touch on how you guys. You're a good judge barometer, if you like, of the economy, I think, because we talk about those bumps in the road, particularly in the M&A world. And with, I'm not going to go into politics, but with an election on the horizon, I went into a meeting a couple of months ago, and the board were in. It was a reasonable sized business, and the board were in the office, and they're in the room next door, and they were having a meeting preparing for a Labour government. And I thought that, and it might be me being naive because they're quite a big business. And I just thought that was, it just struck me that the board in February would be having a meeting preparing their life for a Labour government. What's your feelings on the future for Q4 of this year, and then as we go into 2025?
So I look at our pipeline, and our pipeline's strong. Generally speaking, when there's an election, we probably see the 6 to 8 week period and the run up to it, people sitting on their hands and not doing anything. Or, depending on the way in which it might go, suddenly trying to push through a load of transactions, because I think they're going to be in a regime that's slightly more restrictive post-election. Not yet seeing that, which is quite interesting. I suspect, without wanting to get too political, that we probably are looking at a change of government, and I think most business people I speak to are anticipating that there will be, and therefore accepting that what will be, will be. There's been so many years of disruption as well that I think people are, generally speaking, thinking we can't let these things stop us from doing what we're wanting to do.
There's another part of this as well, and that is, EMW host pretty regular sort of employment updates for businesses. There was one a couple of weeks ago at the Milton Keynes office, and in the room, the businesses that were in the room were asking the same question about how is HR and employment law going to be affected if there is a change of government. And so those conversations are already happening. So actually that seminar that was done on that day was looking at the white paper that's been, well, actually no, it's a green paper. It's presented by Labour. I think it's about 2 years old. They've I think rode back from some of those proposals, but some of them are still active. And so businesses want to know, look, is this stuff going to happen? How will it affect us? So these are conversations that are happening.
It's almost like since the last election, every year we've had something big to contend with.
We have, and let's be honest. The parties, both of the main political parties, are fairly centrist these days, aren't they? It's
yeah. Let's not go there, because I'll end up with either a load of complaints or
Well, you're going to get them anyway.
Right. As tradition with every episode of the podcast, I always like to close off by asking you who you would take for dinner tomorrow night. 3 people, past or present. So Hassan, if you're going for dinner,
can you ask him first?
Go on, then, James.
I'll take you.
No.
Arthur and James.
Arthur, we've never been on someone's dinner table before, have we, mate? Go on, James. Who do you have, past or present?
Past and present.
There's no right or wrong here.
That is a really good question. God, I don't want to sound too boring.
I can think of one.
Go on.
Muhammad Ali. I would love to just be able to sit.
Are you a boxing fan?
Yes, but I'm a fan of him and what he
stood for. Yeah.
His involvement with the civil rights movement, and just normalising the faith. And it was funny.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah.
He had
so that would
charisma, didn't he?
yeah.
He used it.
Oh, so that would be.
One of yours, Lance Armstrong. I follow a lot of cycling, and I just, as we all know, that he, protested his innocence for years and years and years.
Is he the Man City guy of cycling?
Kind of.
Sorry.
Yeah. He was just ahead there for years and years and years, and when all the drug scandals were going on, he was saying that he
I'm not saying Man City are taking drugs at all.
I
By
understand
the way,
ultimately it came out. He had an interview, and it came out that in fact he had been doping for his entire career, and it'd be really interesting
Just
to
to
sit
get
there
to
at
the
dinner
bottom of that.
and just get to the bottom of that. I probably would take Hassan to dinner actually, because you've noticed we seem to get on.
Yeah,
he'd be quite entertaining.
I used to refer to Fraser and I as the Ant and Decker Northamptonshire, but he's left me hanging. So I think we've got two new guys for that now.
Shall we take Anton Deck along as well? And we'll get some tips.
Actually, yeah.
Guys, honestly, I've really enjoyed this, and I won't lie, because I'd never met you before, Hassan.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of James's company a few weeks ago at the
Yep.
Saints, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I didn't know what to make of it because, well, with law, you don't know what you can ask, what you can't
that's
ask,
true.
and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank
and I wish you every success going forward. I think you're going to smash it out of the park, and by the sounds of it, there's some more mergers on the horizon, so we'll get you back in
definitely. Please do.
after the next one.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, gents.
Super. Thanks, Ben.